Vampires as we know them today, with specific characteristics such as fangs, aversion to the sun, and immortality, were not part of ancient Roman beliefs. However, ancient Rome had its own set of legends and myths about creatures that shared some similarities with what we identify as vampires today. These creatures, although not called vampires, were associated with death, bloodlust, and the ability to cause harm to the living. 1. Lamia. The Lamia was a figure from Greek mythology that was adopted and reinterpreted in ancient Rome. She was said to be a demonic woman or spirit who fed on the blood of children and devoured them. According to legends, Lamia was originally a beautiful woman who was cursed by Hera, Juno to the Romans, after Zeus, Jupiter, fell in love with her. As a result of the curse, Lamia became a monstrous being with an insatiable thirst for blood and, in some versions, the ability to shapeshift in order to seduce her victims. In Roman literature, the Lamia was often used as a warning to children, and some believed she would sneak into homes at night to attack infants. Although she did not suck blood from the neck like modern vampires, the connection to bloodlust and nocturnal hunting makes her a precursor to the vampire figure. 2. Stricks. The Strix, or Striga, was a nocturnal owl-like creature with vampiric tendencies. In Roman mythology, it was described as a bird of ill omen with an appetite for human flesh and blood, especially that of children. Legends said that Strix were transformed women or witches who could take the form of a monstrous bird. They flew during the night to attack their victims, sucking their blood or devouring their flesh. Strix are mentioned in the works of Ovid and Petronius, and were part of popular superstitions. To protect themselves against these creatures, people performed rituals or used amulets. It was also believed that certain magical practices, such as placing specific herbs on doors and windows, could prevent the Strix from entering the house. 3. Empusa. Another vampiric creature in Greco-Roman mythology was the Empusa, which originally belonged to Greek folklore but was also assimilated into Roman culture. The Empusa was a kind of demon or female spirit associated with Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft. She was said to have the ability to shapeshift and appear as a beautiful woman to seduce men and then devour their flesh or drink their blood. Empusas were feared creatures, and were believed to appear especially at night, on lonely roads or in cemeteries. In some versions of the myth, one of their legs was made of bronze, which added a strange and supernatural element to their appearance. 4. Myths of the revenants, or dead people who return. In ancient Rome, there were also beliefs in vengeful spirits or dead people returning to torment the living. These figures were known as revenants or living dead, who returned from their graves to take revenge on those who had harmed them in life or to fulfill an unresolved purpose. Although not specifically described as bloodsuckers, these undead could cause physical and emotional harm to the living. Practices to ward off these spirits included purification rituals, sacrifices, and the placement of magical objects in tombs to prevent the dead from leaving their graves. 5. Magic and sorcery associated with blood consumption. In Roman culture, magic and witchcraft also included practices involving the use of blood, reinforcing the idea of the connection between the supernatural and the consumption of this vital liquid. Sorceresses, such as those described in the works of Horace and Lucan, often used blood in their rituals to invoke spirits or to curse their enemies. Although these practices were not performed by vampiric creatures, they show that blood had a powerful symbolism in Roman magic and occultism. 6. Funerary practices and the fear of the dead. The Romans had specific practices to ensure that the dead did not return to haunt the living. Bodies were buried with coins in their eyes to pay Charon, the ferryman of the underworld, so that their soul could cross over to the afterlife. Heavy objects were also placed in graves to keep restless spirits in check. These practices reveal an underlying fear of the dead and the possibility that they might return with malicious intent. 7. The role of Christianity in the transformation of beliefs. With the arrival of Christianity in later centuries, some Roman beliefs about nocturnal creatures and bloodthirsty spirits merged with Christian ideas of demons and evil beings. Notions of undead creatures, or those who drank blood, began to take on more diabolical connotations, laying the groundwork for what would later become the vampire myth in medieval Europe. Conclusion. In ancient Rome, although there was no precise concept of the vampire as we understand it today, stories of creatures such as the Lamia, the Stricks and the Empusa show that Roman culture had a deep fear of supernatural beings that attacked during the night and fed on the flesh and blood of the living. These mythical figures shared elements with modern vampires, such as bloodlust and nocturnal hunting, and are part of the rich tradition of legends and beliefs that evolved over time to become what we now know as the vampire myth.